Hi, this is Laura Downey. For my journal this week, I'm going to be reciting a passage from Louisa May Alcott's book work. I chose a passage from the chapter entitled Mrs. Wilkins' Minister. It's when Christy goes to church, Mass with Mr. Power for the first time, and she's really doubtful, and I think this is an important passage in the novel, so here it goes. Christy was struck by the large proportion of young people in the place, of all classes, both sexes, and strongly contrasting faces. Delicate girls looking with the sweet wistfulness of maidenly hearts for something strong to lean upon in love, sad-eyed women turning to heaven for the consolations or the satisfaction earth could not give them, anxious mothers perplexed with many cares, trying to find light and strength, young men with ardent faces, breathless, aspiring, and impetuous, longing to do and dare, tired-looking students with perplexed wrinkles on their foreheads, evidently coming to see if this man had discovered the great secrets they were delving after, and soul-sick people trying this new and perhaps dangerous medicine when others failed to cure. Many earnest, thoughtful men and women were there, some on the anxious seat and some already at peace, having found the clue that leads safely through the labyrinth of life. Here and there a white head, a placid old face, or one of those fine countenances that tell, unconsciously, the beautiful story of Victoria's soul. This is just the first paragraph in the passage. I think this is important because religion has not been a huge part of Christie's life up until this point, and generally in Victorian novels, religion is one of the topics that comes up, particularly in sensation novels. For instance, in Lady Audley's Secret, her lack of religion and lack of religious beliefs was part of her countenance, and now Christy is learning, and from this point forward, religion becomes a more important part of her life. So I think this is interesting with this first entrance scene when she's looking at all the different kinds of people. She's still she's doubting it. She's not sure what she's going to think about it. She's really skeptical. So I think that she's seeing now all the different kinds of people who are part of religion, which is kind of opening her eyes to what it is. So it continues. Some read, some talked, some had flowers in their hands, and all sat at ease, rich and poor, black and white, young and old, waiting for the coming of the man who had power to attract and hold so many of his kind. Christy was so intent on watching those about her that she did not see him enter, and only knew it by the silence which began just in front of her, and seemed to flow backward like a wave, leaving a sea of expectant faces turning to one point. That point was a gray head, just visible of the little desk which stood in the middle of a great platform. A vase of lovely flowers was on the little shelf at one side, a great Bible reposed on the other, and a manuscript lay whitely on the red slope between. In a moment, Christy forgot everything else, and waited with a curious anxiety to see what manner of man this was. Presently, he got up with an open book in his hand, saying, in a strong, cheerful voice, "Let us sing!" And having read a hymn as if he had composed it, he sat down again. Then everybody did sing, not harmoniously, not heartily, led by an organ which the voices followed at their own sweet will. At first, Christy wanted to smile, for some shouted and some hummed, some sat silent and others sung sweetly, but before the hymn ended she liked it, and thought that the natural praise of each individual soul was perhaps more grateful to the ear of God than the masses by great masters or psalms warbled tunefully by hired opera singers. Once again, I'm just going to pause and comment on that. I think that this is really important because it presents the idea of religion as not being as structured as it has been seen in novels before, and obviously Christie's perception of religion is not what she's experiencing right now. She's obviously understanding that this is more about a plethora of different kind of people coming together, really eccentric group. It's very different, and she's really learning that religion can be a part of your life and not be super structured. So this is beginning Mr. Powers. Then Mr. Power rose again and laid his hands together with a peculiarly soft and reverent gesture, lifted up his face, and prayed. Christy had never heard a prayer like that before, so devout, so comprehensive, and so brief. A quiet talk with God, asking nothing but more love and duty toward him and our fellow men, thanking him for many mercies, and confiding all things trustfully to the dear Father and Mother of souls. The sermon which followed was as peculiar as the prayer and as effective. One of Power's Judgment Day sermons, as she heard one man say to another when it was over. Christy certainly felt at first as if kingdoms and thrones were going down and each man being sent to his own place. A powerful and popular wrong was arrested, tried, and sentenced, then and there, with a courage and fidelity that made plain words eloquent, and stern justice beautiful. He did not take David of old for his text, but the strong, sinful, splendid Davids of our day, who had not fulfilled the promise of their youth, and whose seeming success was a delusion and a snare to themselves and others, sure to be followed by sorrowful abandonment, defeat, and shame. The ashes of the ancient hypocrites and Pharisees was left in peace, but those now living were heartily denounced, modern money changers scarred out of the temple, and the everlasting truth set upon therein. As he spoke, not loudly nor vehemently, but with an indescribable effect of inward force and true inspiration, a curious stir went through the crowd at times, as a great wind sweeps over a cornfield, lifting the broad leaves to the light and testing the strength of root and stem. People looked at one another with a roused expression, eyes kindled, heads nodded involuntarily, approval, and an emphatic "That's so" dropped from the lips of men who saw their own vague instincts and silent opinions strongly confirmed and nobly uttered. Consciences seemed to have been pricked to duty, eyes cleared to see that their golden idols had feet of clay, and wavering wills strengthened by the solitary courage and integrity of one indomitable man. Another hymn and a benediction that seemed like a fit of grace after meat, and then the crowd poured out, not yawning, thinking of best clothes or longing for dinner, but waked up, full of talk, and eager to do something to redeem the country and the world. Christie went rapidly home because she could not help it, and burst in upon Mrs. Wilkins with a face full of enthusiasm, exclaiming, while she cast off her bonnet as if her head had outgrown it since she left, "It was splendid! I had never heard such a sermon before, and I'll never go to church anywhere else." "I knew it! Ain't it fillin'? Don't it give you a kind of spiritual hist and make things worth more somehow?" cried Miss Wilkins, gesticulating with the pepper pot in a way which did not improve the steak she was cooking and caused great anguish to the noses of her offspring. That's where I'm going to end this passage. I think that this is an extremely important part of the book because from here on out, Christie does most of her life is Mr. Powers really influences it, and he's a huge help to her. He gets her next job out in the country, her job after that with working with him. I think that this is huge because religion, she had no concept of it, and she did not understand it at all. And she thought that Christianity and any religion was so structured and so rule bound that she did not understand it. She had no interest in going, and this experience was just so different from anything she'd ever had. And also this just makes a complete different statement about religion that has been said in most other books before this. Usually religion, particularly Catholicism, is so structured, so rule bound. I mean, that's how religion is portrayed in novels, and this is just such a deviation from that. It is totally different. It shows that religion is such an eclectic thing, and that so many different people come together and learn, and people pray in different ways, and people have completely different perceptions of God and what he means to them, and that just the power of this one speaker really changed her life and really had a huge effect on her. So I think that this is a really important part of the novel. I think that this is really a turning point for Christie. I think after this, it helps her find herself, and it helps her through times when things are hard. For instance, when she's in the country and she decides that she wants to leave because she thinks that David wants to be with Kitty. And she really looks to Mr. Powers and looks to God and religion, and she struggles with it, but this is really the beginning of an ongoing relationship between her and God and religion, and Mr. Powers is really a central pinpoint of her life from now on. So I just thought that this passage was really important. I thought it was important to be touched on. So that is why I did my podcast on this. So thank you, and see you in class.